Welcome back, everybody, to Real Repairs for Real Customers. Let's hope I don't get into any difficulties in this video like I did in the last, but you never know. Over the years, I've got many requests to show some videos of aircraft seating refurbishment. However, I've held off on this channel for some time because I wanted to first of all present some hopefully innovative and creative ideas that would allow mobile tech to do quality repairs. And these would be applicable to the vast majority of techs working out there and would help them to put food on their table right away. But now we're going to slip in a video on aircraft seating. This is in a Gulfstream, and we're going to title the video Saving the Gulfstream. And you'll see what I mean by that right after this. So when an aircraft is out of service, that's typically a good time to take care of any interior work, such as refurbishment of the seats, new carpeting, sidewalls, any cabinetry improvements. And this department will be some weeks doing the stripping, sanding, the priming, the painting, and the striping. Then there will be the logistical exercise of getting all the departments to converge, including maintenance and avionics, to complete the aircraft. Here we've pulled some of the leather out of the aircraft in order to assess the damage done to it. This coating strips off with acetone, so we're assuming it's a lacquer solvent finish that's been put on. It has damaged the original water-based polymer finish that comes on the seats, but not beyond repair. Judging from the designs, it appears that the coating was put on maybe too heavy and pooled in areas as well. And then you see here the discoloration. Well, certainly it wasn't put on this color, which means that the pigments have faded over time. The yellow has gone and left behind violet, as you know, the complementary color to yellow. Everyone was totally surprised to see zinc chromate primer on this leather seat, the same primer that they used for the metal. Here it is a few days later, and I have the entire interior in my shop, and we're getting a little overview of some of the finishes. In fact, here you can see the difference in the finish. And you see under here, we found where they tried to match up some color. Nice try. My guess is that they found some leftover colors and decided to dab them here and see if any one of them was by any chance close. There was a strange chromium type of shimmer to this color. As you can see, it's a terrible job. They were just in utter disbelief that someone could have done this. We haven't found any damages other than some scratches in that one panel. And to fix one panel and to recolor all the seats is unbelievable. We need plenty of tabletop space. We have 6 seats. We have the divan, which is 2 seats, and we have the lavatory cover seat, which also functions as a jump seat, and various other parts. We stripped some of the smaller parts with acetone in order to get a good look at what would have been the factory color. We still have not been able to figure out why they put any color on the bottoms of the seat cushions. And this is the only cushion that has the zinc chromate primer on it. And you can see they piled it on here, layer after layer, until it filled the scratches in the leather finish. When in fact, you know, But those scratches could have been wet sanded in order to feather them out, and just regular leather coating could have taken care of that panel, and that's all you would have needed for the entire aircraft. We did later find a couple of small damages. Those could have been blended in. No need to do all the seats for a couple of small repairs. I have two solvents on my van, one xylene, which is slow drying, and one acetone, which is very aggressive but fast drying. The xylene wasn't strong enough to take off the lacquer paint, but here's where I use xylene, just so that you can get an idea why I carry it. It's great for shoe scuffs and adhesive residue from tapes and so forth. The nice thing about it is not too aggressive, so it never ruins the plastic, but it does get the scuffs off. It dwells long enough, stays wet long enough, and here as we've let it dry, we see another spot that we missed right on the edge, and so we can catch that. But it does a superb job on those shoe scuffs on plastic. Also, xylene is what took care of every bit of this vandalism. Even here at the instrument cluster, it didn't craze the plexiglass at all. Everything you see here cleaned up perfectly. The only thing that we didn't do on this vehicle was the seats. And the seats had already been removed and were being reupholstered. But xylene took care of the whole business. The other solvent is acetone. We've already mentioned that as being a very aggressive solvent, and you've seen me use that already. That's the one we used on the foam steering wheel in order to melt that foam and to reconstitute it. Just be careful, don't get it on anything else because it can craze some plastics, it can leave spots and damage some plastics. For each of these chemicals, the xylene was not aggressive enough. The acetone was, but you know, acetone evaporates so quickly it leaves before the job is done. So I went to purchase some lacquer thinner. If you'll notice, it contains a blend of solvents: toluene, methanol, acetone, and Legroin, which you may know as naphtha. All this is just what I was looking for. To understand why, petrochemicals are separated at refineries where each of the solvents comes off at a different temperature and is distilled. We then end up with various solvents that evaporate at much different rates. Various alcohols can be produced by a similar process, just saying. This chart will let us compare the solvents we've been talking about. I've listed them from fast to slow. We're going to compare the evaporation rate of each one to N-butyl acetate as our control. And we'll take a brief look at the flash point. The flash point is basically the temperature at which any one of these can produce enough vapors to be ignited. The flash point is somewhat relative to the evaporation rate, but bear in mind that each of these solvents also possesses other qualities which affect evaporation rate. Taking our first example, if acetone produces that kind of vapors at -4 Fahrenheit, you might reason that it must be a very fast evaporating solvent. And you'd be right, because it evaporates at 6.3 times the rate of our control, N-butyl acetate. By the way, our control flash point is basically room temperature. Now let's look at the other extreme. Xylene doesn't produce that kind of vapor until 81 degrees Fahrenheit. So you might assume that's a very slow drying, slow evaporating. And you'd be right, because it's about 3/4 of the rate of evaporation as our control, N-butyl acetate. And so all of the other solvents we're going to be considering are somewhere between these two extremes. Now with this information, let's take another look at our lacquer thinner label. So for toluene, our comparison evaporation rate is 1.9. Methanol comes in at 3.5. Acetone, Mr. Speedy, comes in at 6.3. And Legroin, or naphtha, comes in at 1.6. So we have two relatively slow solvents, one medium and one fast. So what lacquer thinner is, then, is various distilled solvents that are recombined in order to target a specific temperature use or a specific evaporation rate to suit our particular needs. A painter may find, for example, that his paint is drying too quickly in hot weather and so wants to slow the drying time down a little bit. Therefore, he would want a slow reducer. Likewise, in very cold weather when nothing wants to evaporate, you want a fast reducer. So now you know why I smiled when I read the label and was willing to purchase the gallon. As a side note, methanol is listed as insolvent for acrylic lacquer, and so for our usage, it serves to keep suspended and to wash away what the other solvents produce. Well, I hope you found that interesting. I find that a little deeper understanding makes your work so much more fun. Now let's get to work. The secret here is to keep our rag wet. Once it starts to dry a little bit, we need to refill it because otherwise we're going to be spending too much energy. We want the solvent to do all the work for us. And we're going to have to change paper towels regularly because it fills up pretty quickly. It's hard to imagine they put this many coats. This is one time when it's okay to throw all your trash on the floor. That way all these paper towels dry out and they don't chance spontaneously combusting in the trash can. So we're well off on our journey, following the preparation steps for one entire seat from start to finish. Not your typical cleaning and prepping, however. This stripping work I am spreading out over the course of several days, so the first week we will spend stripping and getting all our parts ready for the color step. In between there, we also have some repairs to do. Normally, you wouldn't have to remove the armrest caps, but the previous recolor left a line, and so by removing the caps, we'll be better able to erase that line. You have to take care also, while you have the solvent here on the leather, that these parts don't stick to one another. So what we'll do is go back and check every few minutes and make sure that they're not sticking. If the leather panels appear to be sticking to one another, pulling too hard can actually rip the leather itself. So it's always better to slip something in there and pry it loose. So I'm able to get most, but not all, of the recolor off of this leather. It appears that some has actually etched in quite well to the original water-based polymer coating. But overall, we're making quite an improvement already. As the solvent dries more fully, it's easier sometimes to see where some of that violet residue still exists. As you see, we needed to load up with some more solvent and do this panel really wet. This guy's in a hurry because he saw that glass with the ice cubes earlier in the video. And what was out of frame a little bit earlier was the headrest that we also had to strip. And speaking of headrest, you find that in some planes the headrests very seldom get adjusted. So in the down position, the headrest can become stuck to the other leather of the seat back. And that's one of those cases where you don't want to pull too hard, but you want to slip something thin in there but not sharp, and just pry that loose before adjusting the headrest or removing it. Well, that's all we have time for this time. Thank you for watching, and come back for part 2. We'll be discussing making the color that we need for this entire aircraft interior. And we'll get into full production mode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so when part 2 comes up, you'll be notified.